Richard, for that kind introduction. Hi, I'm Mia, and I'll be discussing food waste management, especially during COVID-19 here in the Philippines. So, today I will be discussing the impact of food waste, especially now in the middle of a pandemic, and a simple solution to manage this global issue. So, the Food and Agriculture Organization reveals that one third of all food we produce for human consumption never even reaches a plate. Whether we categorize this as food loss or food waste depends on when it falls off the food chain. So, food loss occurs at production, post harvest, processing, distribution stages in the food supply chain, while food waste refers to food that completes the food supply chain up to a final product and is of good but it is discarded. So, understanding when food loss or waste occurs is important because it affects how we build more sustainable and resilient food systems. In general, high income countries such as the United States have significantly greater levels of food waste. And in contrast, middle and low income countries aren't wasting nearly as much food. In part, this is due to lower supply, lower purchasing power, and less demanding food quality preferences. Instead, in the Philippines, we struggle predominantly with food loss issues. This is often due to outdated machinery and technologies, and food production systems remain unorganized and fragmented. So the lack of access to specialized equipment adds to the extensive food loss in our country. Globally, households are responsible for the largest portion of all food waste, amounting to approximately 50%. The main reasons for food waste are excessive purchasing, aesthetic standards, improper storage, and excessive food portions. Therefore, addressing each of these reasons is the most sustainable way to reduce food waste. When COVID-19 struck the Philippines back in March, the country was quick to respond and initiate a nationwide lockdown. A week or two before lockdown, there was a trend in purchasing essential goods by bulk. Everyone was rushing to stock up on canned goods, rice, and other essential food items with longer shelf lives. Without a clear understanding of how long it would take to contain and address COVID-19, we all prepared for the worst. However, for the underprivileged communities, the food items that they were able to stock only lasted a week or two, after which they turned to the government and other private institutions for support. A typical ayuda or relief package consists of canned goods, rice, water in plastic bottles, and instant noodles. Although these items would keep for longer, it can be argued that they aren't the healthiest options, nor the most thoughtfully packaged ones for the environment. Another evident activity that surfaced during the pandemic and in true Filipino bayanihan fashion is that companies and individuals started to pitch in to support frontliners and at-risk communities during this time by providing packed meals and food packages. As you can see, these packed meals are in styrofoam containers. I just want to note that for later. One of the most common packed meals that frontliners would receive in the start of the pandemic were fast food meals that are packaged in either styrofoam, wax containers, which are rarely biodegradable or compostable, and then they're excessively wrapped in tape to avoid spillage. And more often than not, they're packed together in plastic bags for ease in distribution. So when restaurants started to close down, people opted for takeout or delivery. An increase in takeaway containers and plastic bags were evident as more people were afraid of leaving the safety of their homes to eat out. As the pandemic persisted and stocks at home started to deplete, people had to brave groceries, markets, talipapas, and palenques to replenish their food supply. After interviewing several nanays in our programs, they noticed an increase in plastic bag usage as people started to be more concerned about the contamination of food items and wanted to have an added coat of protection for them. So they would even double or sometimes even triple their plastic bags when they're purchasing foods from the market or groceries. Safety and health have been the priority since the outbreak of this pandemic. Maintaining good hygiene, sanitizing everything not once, but twice, and staying healthy have been our top priorities during this time. But we need to stop and ask ourselves if what we are doing to keep ourselves healthy is contributing to another grave and lurking issue, the climate crisis. We need to understand that there is no away when we dispose of something after it has served its purpose. So I propose a simple and comprehensive solution to address this persisting issue and that is conscious and intentional eating habits. So every day, if we're lucky, because not everyone in our country is, we are given at least 3 opportunities to make a real and lasting difference. This is when we decide what to eat. The practice the practice of being conscious about what we eat will inevitably lead to making it a priority to understand where your food comes from, knowing who prepared it, understanding how it got to your plate, and finding ways to deal with the remnants of it afterwards. This solution aims to build respect for the food cycle and develop a mindset that enables everyone to care enough to ask the right questions and to strive to fill the gaps when there are no answers. So, striving for an evolving mindset and lifestyle is the most resilient solution to food waste. So, why eat consciously and with intention? First, for the environment. It lessens our carbon footprint and water usage. We lessen handling, processing, and chemical treatment in imported food, excuse me. We receive faster, fresher ingredients, and it's overall more sustainable. For the economy, because buying locally supports our national economy, and it's supporting the livelihood of many hardworking Filipinos, especially during this time. And it can aid the fight against poverty. And also for ourselves, because conscious eating leads to the consumption of more vegetables and fruits, and is full of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber. Um, this also helps reverse illnesses, helps our skin become clearer, and it provides us with more energy. So, what are some specific solutions to address food waste? First, it's to buy locally sourced goods, because when we do this, we're supporting local farmers, producers, and businesses, and significantly decreasing our carbon footprint by decreasing the transportation of goods. Second, it's to be aware of your portions. We aim to avoid the takaw tingin mentality, especially as we approach the holidays. So I would recommend not to overorder or over prepare. You can always come back for seconds. Okay. Next is to try going plant-based. So trying to go on a plant-based dominated diet, I talk about this more on Mesa Misis, but and how great the impact is on yourself, the economy, and the planet. It's good for you, it's good for the environment, and it's good for the economy. Proper storage. A lot of food waste is actually due to spoilage because of the improper storage of foods. Not everyone knows how to store the different fruits and vegetables properly, and this leads to spoilage. So using the right materials and even keeping track of your pantry. Our Vice President Lenny Robredo, shared a few weeks ago that her family keeps a pantry inventory. So every time they make a shopping list, they refer to this inventory so they don't double their supply at home, and so they can make the most out of what they still have. Next is to buy in season. There's a natural food cycle that should be respected. And when you buy produce from the markets or talipapa, it is advisable to use produce bags instead of asking for plastic bags. Another thing is to grow your own food. So in Sustainable PH, I have a segment where it's a plant tita segment, which is where I talk about the trend of being a plant tita or plant tito, and kind of shifting the conversation into growing an edible garden instead of just a purely ornamental and pretty one. So in that show, I talk about growing scraps instead of, because not everyone has access to seeds, composting, and other things. All right. So composting, as I mentioned earlier. Next would be to involve your communities. So involve your places of work, your social circles, by educating and challenging them to grow their own food, to ask questions like, where did your food come from? How did it get there? Who grew your food? Keeping these conversations in the mix is good to keeping these conversations in the mix is good to keep them involved. So next would be to support policy on composting, proper segregation, edible gardens, and eating locally and natively. So we should support leaders that prioritize this. So in Mesa Misis, we actually support a number of bills that are in the Senate now that are pushing for segregation of waste, rescuing food for like food banks and food clouds. So that's one of the things that we do. All right. All right, so some eco-friendly organizations that have been my favorites throughout the pandemic. In Mesa Misis, we had a food program where we fed frontliners and at-risk communities, but we didn't want to. So in true plant-based nutrition fashion, we didn't want to put our food into containers that were bad for the environment. So I found these two companies, EcoNest Philippines and Greener Jeans, that provide biodegradable and compostable food packaging. So they have like food containers. Instead of plastic bags, if you can see this photo, it says I am a cassava bag, because this plastic bag is actually 100% compostable. And they have alternatives to bubble wrap, etc., and other plastic packaging. Gising is by far my favorite place to buy fresh produce, because for every box you buy, if you can see the tag on the photo, it says share the goods. For every box of produce you buy, they share a box with another community. And these produce are sourced from local farmers in the community, and it's packaged in a cajon and not plastic bags like most groceries would do. Okay, so in the Philippines, we're lucky that we have a growing consciousness when it comes to our environmental impact. This makes us more aware of the effects of our purchases and habits. Building on this, we can demand transparency from our favorite restaurant, groceries, small businesses, and most especially our leaders, as we recommend alternatives such as compostable packaging for takeaway orders and the reduction of plastic bags in markets and groceries. We can also eliminate the deep environmental footprint of food waste. So every year, the world adds 3.3 billion tons of greenhouse gases to the planet's atmosphere just to produce the food that we never even get to eat. So the practice of conscious and intentional eating habits is a clear, simple, and resilient solution that can be done by everyone. Again, every day you are given 3 opportunities to make a difference, and where you stand on personal health, community support, and your environmental impact is clearly reflected when you decide what you put on your plate. Thank you very much for your time.